afternoon. We're going to begin right at 2 o'clock, like we said. This press conference is being called by the Boone County Prosecutor Todd Meyer. He's here to formally announce charges in the murder of Deputy Jacob Pickett. Speaking first will be Prosecutor Todd Meyer from the Boone County Prosecutor's Office. Second will be Superintendent Doug Carter of the Indiana State Police. And following Superintendent Carter, Sheriff Mike Nielsen has a statement that he would like to make. Prosecutor Meyer will answer questions about the process, the judicial process. Superintendent Carter will not answer questions about the investigation. And Sheriff Nielsen has a prepared statement. Prosecutor Todd Meyer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. We appreciate your work in service to the public to get this information out. I'm going to make some remarks. I'm going to discuss the charges. I'm going to go through the probable cause affidavit, and then I am going to turn things over to Sheriff Nielsen. It's our intent that after I make some remarks, I will take some questions because I know there are questions that I will do my best to try and answer. Of course, some of what is asked, I will simply, by the rules, not be allowed to talk about it as much as I would like to. Once things are handed over to Sheriff Nielsen, though, we are not going to go back and talk about the criminal case. Once it gets to the sheriff, this discussion is about the memorial for Deputy Sheriff Pickett and the celebration of his life. I want to thank Superintendent Carter for being here this afternoon, and I want to thank his entire department for the efforts that they have undertaken to help and lead this investigation at Sheriff Nielsen's request. I want to thank all the other Boone County law enforcement agencies, state, federal agencies that have engaged in this investigation. Things are moving forward at a rapid pace in a very thorough manner. I want to take this time to express my deepest and most sincere condolences to the Pickett family and to the entire Boone County law enforcement community, of which my office is a member of. What has happened in Boone County over the course of just a matter of days, although it feels like weeks and months, have been tragic. Things started last Thursday when Sydney Foster lost her life in an automobile accident, and 2 other students were seriously injured in that accident. Following the news of that, then we lose one of our community's leaders. Both of those persons that we lost last week we celebrated their life in a funeral this morning. If those matters weren't worse enough, then on Friday morning, we get the news an officer's been shot and an officer's down. It's been a devastating time for the people of Boone County. When I speak to the folks throughout the county, be it Jamestown, Zionsville, Whitestown, Lebanon, Thorntown, you name it, everywhere in between, people are hurting in this community. There are a lot of answers, lots of questions. There are a lot of answers that they want. And as I mentioned, to the extent that I can within the bounds of the law and the ethical rules that I am sworn to uphold, I will try to answer those questions today for the community as to what happened on the morning of Friday, March the 2nd. In advance of the conference here this afternoon, you all know that I've provided charging information and probable cause affidavit that is associated with the criminal charges that have been filed against Anthony Bumgart and John Baldwin Jr. I want to take some time to go through those charges. Anthony Bumgart has been charged with murder, possession of methamphetamine as both a level 5 and level 6 felony, carrying a handgun without a license, a level 5 felony, and also as a Class A misdemeanor. resisting law enforcement, possession of marijuana, and an enhanced charge of possession of marijuana. I'll outline now the charges against John Baldwin Jr., and then I'm going to cover the ground on the probable cause affidavit because both of these associates were together and were a part of the pursuit that ultimately ended out on I-65, but certainly diverted in the Indian Springs apartment complex. John Baldwin Jr. has been charged with resisting law enforcement as both a level 6 and Class A misdemeanor. He's been charged with leaving the scene of an accident, criminal recklessness, auto theft, and his criminal background makes him eligible as a habitual felony offender, and he has been charged with that as well. As has been reported, the events on the morning of March the 2nd began at 1402 Yates Street, where police were there to serve an unrelated arrest warrant on a female individual. While there, an individual, later identified as John Baldwin Jr., was identified by one of the officers there at the scene as someone who was also wanted on warrant. He was instructed to stop his vehicle. These three individuals were in the vehicle: John Baldwin Jr., John Baldwin Sr., and Anthony Bumgart. John Baldwin Jr. did not comply with orders to stop the vehicle, and a pursuit ensued. That pursuit wove around the streets of Lebanon in a very reckless manner for approximately 10 minutes until it eventually made its way over to the Indian Springs apartment complex, where John Baldwin Jr. drove the vehicle that he was in over and through some yards in between the apartment complex and some other homes, crashed through a couple of parked vehicles, and at or around this time, Anthony Bumgart was able to exit the vehicle and proceeded to flee on foot. John Baldwin Jr. continued in his flight in the vehicle, and law enforcement continued their pursuit. Deputy Pickett, as you all know, is a canine handler, was stuck in the area where Bumgart and Baldwin Jr. were able to crash through the vehicles because Officer Pickett's vehicle was larger and was not able to get through. He released his canine in pursuit of Bumgart, who was on foot. He pursued as well. Shots were fired by Bumgart. One shot struck and killed Deputy Pickett. Police then returned fire on Bumgart. He was shot and wounded and taken into custody. As I indicated, the pursuit involving Baldwin Jr. Continued, and he was later apprehended by the police out on Interstate 65. I want to stress at this point that this is an active and ongoing investigation. The Indiana State Police and the investigative team are working tirelessly, along with many other agencies, to uncover all of the evidence and all of the individuals who are in any way related to the events that led up to, during, and after Deputy Pickett's death. And the public can rest assured that there will be no stone that is left unturned, and we will conduct a very thorough investigation, and anyone who is responsible in any way for the events that occurred on March the 2nd will be held accountable, and justice will be served for this community and for Deputy Pickett. With that, I will close my remarks. I will answer any questions that I can. Please understand that there is a lot that I would like to say. And I know that many of the people in the community would like to know what I know and what the investigative team knows, but you're just going to have to be patient and let us do our job and get to the bottom of all of this. So it's when I don't answer a question, it's not that I don't want to, it is because I cannot.
Based upon the evidence that you have received, the work of investigators, was this the wild shot of a fleeing man, or did the suspect turn and fire directly at the officer, specifically trying to hit him?
I think as you will read in the probable cause affidavit, the Baumgart did give a statement to police, and in that statement he talks about the deliberate act of shooting at the police officer.
Are you now reviewing this case for the death penalty?
So that is one of the things now that my office will be reviewing, yes. And you know, that is a decision that will be made over a matter of time and in due course. It is not something that I take lightly. There are several factors that go into that. Looking at the nature and character of the offender, his criminal orientation, the crime that was committed. But yes, in Indiana, the law allows the state to seek the death penalty for any person who is accused of murdering a police officer while acting in the line of duty.
But the death penalty is something that you're actually leaning for, not just something that you're reviewing the case for, it's something that you are leaning for.
Based on the evidence as it's been presented to me thus far and what I know about this case, again, I'm not making a decision right now, but yes, I am leaning in that direction.
Todd, is body camera video part of your investigation? If so, what does it show?
So there's going to be a lot of digital evidence that's a part of this case, and we'll be reviewing that going forward. I can't speak to the specifics, though, of what we've captured and what other innocent bystander witnesses have captured on digital recording devices.
Do you believe the suspects were on substances or drugs at the time of pursuit or the shooting?
Well, as the charges reveal, drugs were found on the suspects, and toxicology results will be coming out. They were treated at the hospital for injuries, so we will eventually learn exactly what the state of mind was of these individuals at the time they were fleeing police.
Do you anticipate additional charges? Witnesses' accounts say that this individual was waving a gun around, pointing it at other police officers, fired shots at other police officers, who then returned fire. Do you expect any additional charges, such as attempted murder against him?
So that question is a question that I know a lot of people would like to know the answer to, and all I can say about that is the investigation is ongoing. We are learning more each and every day about the circumstances surrounding the events there at Indian Springs and elsewhere. And to the extent that the evidence leads me and my team to determine that additional charges are warranted against the two that have already been charged or others, then you can fully expect that additional charges will be filed.
What about John Baldwin Sr.? Have you filed charges against him yet?
So again, the investigation is active and ongoing. He is certainly a person that is a part of the events, and as the evidence leads us in certain directions, if he or others are, if it is warranted to file charges against them, then charges will be filed.
Mr. Meyer, how frustrating is it to see that someone like Baldwin and Baumgart are part of the revolving door? These folks are familiar to agencies that should have been behind bars, but in fact, on that day, they posed a danger to public safety. How frustrating is it for your office to have to deal with two gentlemen that, when you look at their backgrounds, have a criminal record between here and Kokomo?
Okay, I understand the question. I'm not going to relate my answer directly to these two individuals, but your question goes to a much broader area that is extremely frustrating to me and to my fellow prosecutors and to law enforcement who are out there in the trenches dealing with the same people over and over and over again. So, for instance, in this case, we have the habitual felony offender charge that is available to us, and it has been filed against somebody who's alleged to be a habitual felony offender.
Where are the Baldwins currently? We know that Baumgart is being held in another county. What can you tell us about where they are?
Based on the circumstances of the case, I think everyone can appreciate the sensitivity to the Boone County Sheriff and his jail staff. These individuals are being held in another jail so that there aren't any issues that can ever be raised with regard to their safety or well-being.
Can you speak to the weapons for the 9mm? Was that belong to any of the three individuals?
I can't speak directly to the ownership of the weapon. That is something that is under investigation, and you can know by the charging information, though, that Baumgart was carrying a handgun without being appropriately licensed.
Do you know how many times Baumgart fired that weapon? Was it the first shot that hit the deputy, or already fired a few shots?
That information is outside the four corners of the probable cause affidavit, and so I don't want to get into answering that.
How many officers fired weapons, how many times was the suspect shot?
That is something that is being investigated as a part of this entire matter, and we'll get to the bottom of that. But again, that really is outside the scope of what I intend to talk about here today.
How many additional years does the habitual offender enhancement count for?
It is it's based on a formula off of the lead count, the highest level felony count that he's convicted of, so yet to be determined. But I can have more specific information for that.
Sir, you mentioned a few moments ago that you've spoken to people in Jamestown and Whitestown. While you can't speak to the specifics of this case, the public has questions about why individuals like this are on the street. So can you at least address them, the public, as to how your office tries to, at the very least, maintain these kinds of individuals or criminals behind bars as long as possible? Because the concern is obviously these are not the only two that currently would be out and about when they should be behind bars.
Right, and so I can speak based on my experience in Boone County, which is this. I think the people of Boone County should feel very fortunate with regard to the judges that we have that serve this community. The judges are responsible for sentencing people, and it has been my experience and it is my belief that the judges do an excellent job in dealing with criminal offenders that are presented before them, and based on their history, character, and the nature and circumstances of the crimes, render very judicious and appropriate sentences.
So will Mr. Baldwin then stay in Boone County for a long time, or will he be released because of the way the current laws are written?
Well, it would be so that's a good question and something that I want to hit on. Mr. Anthony Baumgart is currently being held on no bond. John Baldwin Jr. is being held on higher than standard bond, $100,000 cash on his unrelated probation violation matter, and my office today filed a request for higher than standard bond on the case that we filed against him this afternoon for $250,000 cash or surety. So it is the state's intent to keep Mr. Baldwin Jr. in custody until he pleads guilty or is tried and convicted.
What about Baldwin Sr.? What can you tell us about where he is currently? What's going on?
All I can say is it's an ongoing investigation with regard to any and all other persons who may have some relevancy to this investigation. I'll answer a couple more questions, and then I want to turn it over to the sheriff. I spoke to the judge this morning, and I believe Mr. Baldwin's initial hearing has already occurred, and that there are going to be arrangements made for the initial hearing of Baumgart tomorrow.
How much trouble was Baumgarten in before all this started? What was he looking at as far as jail time or anything? I'm sure you looked this over, but how much trouble was he in before he decided allegedly to commit the acts he committed?
Well, I think you can see by the charging information, perhaps but for the lead count, that would be the answer to your question.
Did you know Deputy Pickett at all?
I did.
Okay, so, and this would be a very difficult case to have to go forth on anyway, but knowing how good of a person he was and how big of an impact he had on the community, that makes it even more difficult, I'm sure, for you to have to go through and read all these details and be here with the sheriff and everyone who's mourning during this time. Is that going to be something?
As Sheriff Nielsen has said, and I cannot say it any more eloquently than he's already said it before, Deputy Pickett was a good man, a wonderful police officer. He was liked by all. He was a pleasure to work with, and he's going to be deeply missed.
My message is going to be short today, and frankly, I've struggled a little bit, but I think my message needs to be to the Boone County community. And I think through extraordinary evil, there's extraordinary good. And we've seen that happen over the course of these last many days. So to the citizens, I suggest to you that there will always be evil that lives amongst us, but the vast majority of people are good. And we cannot lose sight of that. That's exactly what Jake Pickett stood for, to find out who wasn't. And he was that force between good and evil. And like all of us, we've laid there at night and thought, what could have been done different? What could we have done differently? And the answer is nothing. One day we'll understand why that happened. And finally, I'll say to you, as I've said to all of you many times, I stand here in support of the sheriff and of the law enforcement community in Boone County, and we will continue to be here. There's not an asset that we have within the ISP that won't be committed here. And we ask those that know about this complex investigation that's not even remotely done, if you have information for us, please let us know. It could be background on people that we've talked about today. It could be background on someone else. So we're asking and imploring you to please communicate with us. And let this agency get through these next few days. Let this community get through these next few days. And we'll continue to keep this at the very front of us. And again, we'll be here to support that throughout. With that said, I'd like to turn the podium over to my friend Mike Nielsen.
Bear with me. Before I read my prepared statement, I would like to say that we have a very special guest. Brick is here, which is Jake's partner today. And this is one of the few times that Brick has left Jake's side. But I felt it was important that it was his partner for him to be here to listen to Prosecutor Meyer, Superintendent Carter, and to my prepared statement. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the people in this great state of Indiana and to those across this country as we mourn the loss of a hero. As you have heard from Prosecutor Meyer, both individuals were officially charged today in Boone County Superior Court 2. I personally arrested and booked into our facility Anthony Baumgart and John Baldwin Jr. on the charges that Prosecutor Meyer has filed. I am angry. I am so angry. I am sad. I am heartbroken. And I am devastated. But we are not alone. Our community and our brothers and sisters across this country have come together in our time of need. For that, we will forever be grateful. Jake, we will not give up until justice is done for you. You are a true warrior. We will all stand together steadfast until those responsible for your untimely death are held accountable. Jake, you paid the ultimate sacrifice, and we will never forget your courage, your dedication, your commitment, and your warrior spirit. You will forever live on in our lives and in those lives that you touched by giving yourself so graciously even after death. Jake's visitation will be held at Crown Hill Funeral Home in Indianapolis on Thursday, March 8th from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Jake's funeral services will be held Friday, March 9th at 11 o'clock at the Connection Point Christian Church. Immediately following the services, Jake will be escorted by Jen's school, by the Boone County Courthouse, by his memorial vehicle, then through Whitestown, Zionsville, and then on to his final resting place at Crown Hill Cemetery. The further details on the exact route will be available when they are finalized. Jen would like to personally thank each of you for the outpouring of support. Thank you.